Welcome back, listeners, for another great episode of the Smart Retirement Podcast. This is your co-host, Matt Hollander, joined today with my co-host, Jeff Shulam. How we doing, Jeff?
Excellent. How are you? I like that smile.
I mean, it's hard not to smile. There's been so much traveling going on lately now that everything's opening back up. I think I've been to 3 different countries now in the last 30 days. Just really enjoying life. I haven't really been able to go out and do seminars because I think a lot of the community here is a little nervous with this Delta variant coming out with COVID, not really wanting to get back into rooms and things. So continuing doing my webinars for people that don't want to be in a room, but at the same time, I can do a webinar anywhere in the world. So it's been pretty nice. I mean, being able to travel, get to see new places, just kind of open up my mind and keep a healthy mind, I think has been pretty important. But
I'm sure tequila was involved with that open mind.
Yeah. So one of the places we went to, I was down in Cancun. I was over in Cabo San Lucas, and
Awesome.
There was probably a fair share of tequila drank. When you're in Mexico, you have to drink tequila. We did the typical Cabo Wabo stop while we were in Cabo San Lucas. And, that was a rough next morning, but it was what it was. What have you been up to?
Did you get any time to relax and think about your retirement?
I try to do that as much as I can, but while I was in Cancun, I actually had 3 days by myself and really just got to sit on the beach and reflect on a lot of things. And listeners, I mean, if you haven't taken a vacation by yourself, if you're not married, don't have a significant other, I strongly suggest you do so. And go to a foreign country where you don't speak the language. It makes things really, really interesting. And you really get to kind of have a new finding for yourself. So it was kind of fun. But
excellent.
You been doing any traveling, Jeff, since our last episode?
No, I've had friends staying over and showing them around Los Angeles area, which has been fun. I went up to the Getty Museum. I haven't been up there for a while. It's so beautiful. The gardens up there and the building, and took some great shots. It was interesting because I viewed the little timeline of Getty himself and him growing up in the Midwest someplace and discovering oil. And, by the year 76, he was the richest man in the world.
Sure.
And I'm thinking to myself, especially as an accountant, I'm thinking, man, I got to get into a business where your cost of goods sold is zero, right? I mean, yes, there's the cost of acquisition to extract oil, but once that's paid off. I mean, having oil, or let's say, Hertz, he was in the media business. What does he do? He's creating content. That was free too. I mean, those are the types of businesses we should be in, Matt.
Anything that has residual income, right? At the end of the day as well.
Absolutely.
That doesn't have
like that
sold. So.
So nothing major on my end, but I've been working hard.
Good.
Hope to see that behind me and enjoy the fall.
Well, I think during this fall, you and I need to take our annual trip. I don't know if we're going to go back down to Costa Rica, but we got to do something. So, which kind of leads me to, what we're going to talk about today. So we've got episode 56, and we're essentially going to be talking about where we want to retire. So episode title is going to be Where We Finish in Racing or in Retirement is Important. Right, Jeff? I mean, we got to have happiness wherever we retire. And, if you have a choice of where you want to retire, I mean, how do you make that decision, right? How much money do you have to retire on, right? I think that's going to be the first thing to figure out. I think that, the cost of living of wherever you're going to decide to settle is going to be important. Whether it be from city to city, from the state that you're in, or moving to a different state, or heck, even moving out of the country, right? But I mean, some people have family, right? You want to be close to your family. That might play a huge role into it. My dad, for instance, when they were living in California, they were by the beach. He's got really bad arthritis, and he'd wake up in the morning in a lot of pain. Couldn't really move around a whole lot. Was miserable. So when I actually moved out to Arizona, he was like, let's go. His doctor told him, dry climate is perfect for arthritis. I can tell you 7 years ago when they moved out here, he hasn't had arthritis pain anymore. So There's something to be said for that dry weather, right? But I mean, real estate costs, healthcare costs, these are all things that we've got to look into. But then secondly is, what do you have for hobbies, right? Because a lot of people think that their expenses are going to go down when they retire. I usually find it's the exact opposite.
Well, our hobbies are very expensive.
Yes, this is true. But I think even for the average person that doesn't go out and race like you and I do, Jeff, they may be golfers, they may be this, they may be that, and they have hobbies, and now they're going to have all this free time. Well, how are you going to take up your free time? You're going to spend it on hobbies, right? And depending on where you're at, a round of golf, right, could be $60. It could be $600, right? I mean, I say $600 kind of jokingly-ish. I took a trip a couple years ago out to West Virginia, and we stayed at the Greenbrier, which was an old Secret Service bunker back during the Cold War. It basically looks like a mini White House, but they have an annual golf tournament out there, and to get out there for a round of golf is $700 a round, plus your cart, plus your clubs, plus, right? So if you're an avid golfer, do you want to be there? Do you want to be somewhere in Arizona where we've got a ton of golf? But in Arizona, you can only really golf 9 months out of the year unless you're superhuman and can golf in 110 degrees or want to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning as the sun's coming up. So I think that
that's
a lot
not
of
a hobby.
sounds like work. So I think in today's episode, Jeff, I want to get into some of the statistics of what we're seeing. I know you had done some research. Bankrate had done a survey that I want to get into a little bit as well. Just talking about the different percentages of what kind of goes into the basis of how to make that decision, and maybe come up with some recommendations for our listeners to kind of get them on track of how they can budget for where they want to retire. Because if they're finding, we talk about a lot on the show is creating a retirement plan, right, Jeff? And by doing so, you're trying to have some expectation of how much money you're going to have throughout your life expectancy. Now, if we can reduce the cost of living and still have a happy retirement, and maybe have some money left over for the heirs, maybe that's what you're trying to accomplish. But I think today's episode, I think it'll be pretty beneficial to any of these people that are probably 5 to 10 years away from retirement, really trying to put their head down and really figure out where do we want to go and what do we want to do when we retire. So.
Right. So what you have to take into consideration when you're setting up that retirement plan is, the cost of living and where you're going to live, because that's going to vary dramatically. And have you paid off your home? Are you planning on traveling? Those are all kinds of big expenses that you got to take into consideration. And obviously, in different countries, cost of living might be different, higher or lower. And I think, if anything, we should talk about maybe, staying home for a little bit and maybe what are the places in the United States that are good places to live and why, and what are the bad places
Sure.
To avoid.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I think that's a great topic for our listeners.
All right. Well, then let's do this. Listeners, we're going to take a quick break for our sponsors. And when we come back, we'll get into the statistics and some of the ins and outs of where Jeff and I may think might be a good place for you to retire. So, listeners, stick around. Yeah. We'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back, listeners, from that short break. Welcome back, and we're going to be talking about episode 56 here, just kind of talking about where we finish in racing or retirement is important, right? So we're trying to get into the idea of where are we going to retire? Where are we going to spend the rest of our lives? And what are the factors that are going to come into that decision, right? I think we can all agree that retirement definitely brings a slower pace of life, right? We don't have those work deadlines we're trying to meet. We're not playing the office politics and things anymore, and we're not trying to stay afloat in these big cities, right? San Francisco, New York, spending X amount of dollars for our cost of living, right? We've hit in our golden years. We're on the route for our 20, 30, maybe even 40-year vacation. Where are we going to go, right? We're going to settle by a beach. We're going to go to the mountains. Do we like fishing? Do we like golf? Do you like cross-country skiing? These are all things that are going to come into that decision, right? But Bankrate did a really, really good job. And Jeff, thank you again for finding this report. And listeners, I'll make sure to put a copy of this report so you can kind of go through, find your state. But they're really ranking this on 5 different things. So first, and this is going to be 40% of the decision of how they're ranking things, is going to be the affordability rank or your cost of living for this certain state or area. The next thing they're going to look at is the wellness rank, and that's going to take up 20%. So that's going to be our healthcare costs, services that are available, et cetera there. Next on the line is going to be our culture rank. So 15% of culture rank. Next going to be weather. You know, Jeff, we talked about a little bit ago with my dad's arthritis. I mean, that can go into the wellness, or they could go into the dry climate, but weather rank. So that's going to be 15%. And really important, crime rank, right? Crime rank, or crime rate, if you will, they're going to put as 10%. So what I'd like to do now, Jeff, is let's go through the top 10 worst states, according to Bankrate. This isn't you or me, that they're saying are, based upon these different factors, not really the best states to necessarily retire in. So the first one on the list is actually Maryland. So they're saying Maryland is the worst state in the country to retire on. Now, a lot of that's coming from their wellness rank, whether it be the cost of healthcare and things there, and then also crime. I mean, crime is pretty high in their statistics based upon this survey. So follow.
Wellness isn't what kind of spas they have? I thought that's... Sorry, go on.
I mean, to give you an idea, Jeff, I mean, wellness rank, out of 100, some of these states are up in the 30s and 40s, even 50s. Yeah. Maryland's at 4.
Oh, my God.
Okay, I think they're the worst on the chart other than Hawaii. Hawaii's got a 2 for when it comes to wellness. I mean, granted, everything's such a far distance. Sometimes when you're in Hawaii, it's kind of hard to judge those things. But so we've got Maryland as the worst, followed by Minnesota, and followed by Kansas, Montana, Alaska, believe it or not. I mean, I guess Alaska makes sense. It's kind of hard to get anywhere in Alaska. Everything's spread out, right? You take a seaplane to the hospital if you need to, and that's going to be expensive.
Yeah.
Maine, and what's interesting about Maine is they've got a 1 when it comes to their culture rank.
Culture. Oh, God.
I mean, I guess if you're not a lobster, if you're not into lobster and things in Maine, you're not in the cool crowd. I don't know.
Is culture that thing that grows in your ear or underneath your ear?
So you've got Alaska, Maine, Arkansas, Alabama, believe it or not. And Alabama, I was kind of shocked. But what they're saying is the affordability rank in Alabama lately, the cost of real estate, the cost of living in Alabama is actually going up.
Hey.
Maybe it's something to do with things that are going in the politics, right? You see a lot of people going from California and New York and moving into one of these purple or red states to eliminate taxes in retirement, right? Might not even be for political reasons. They're just trying to get away from the taxation during their retirement since they're not earning in these areas, which makes sense.
Yeah.
But Alabama is definitely towards the lower side of affordability. And then for a tie, we've got Idaho and Connecticut and Washington. So Connecticut and Washington, Connecticut makes sense. Being the East Coast, they're saying the affordability there is actually pretty decent. But when it comes to wellness, culture, and crime, it's pretty high. Right. So maybe you don't want to move to Connecticut, but that's kind of like being up in New York. Right. Or, California is not too far out of this. I think it's number 37. So we'll say the 13th worst place to retire. Now, granted, if you've got the money, go for it, right? If your dream is to be by the beach and you want 75-degree weather most of the year, Jeff, you know it best. I mean, if you were out living in Malibu, you'd probably have that, right?
Oh, for sure. For sure. I'm surprised at Idaho. I thought Idaho would have been a nice place to be. I know I've been up there a couple of times and really enjoyed it up there.
Well, you know what they say about Idaho is the affordability and things are pretty good, but what they're finding is the crime rate there is bad. So I don't know if it's the younger generation and there's a lot of drug use and stuff going on there. That could be part of the reason of the crime being kind of where it is. In retirement, you don't want to have, these locked screen doors and these locked windows and bars over your windows. You want to be able to look out and really enjoy what you're doing, right?
Sure. And I'm sure, you're a little bit more vulnerable too once you get older. You don't want to be caught up in any of those crime situations.
Absolutely. So,
and then I wonder on culture, I assume that means more like, the theaters and the museums and things like that. Because I know that, I have season tickets to certain theaters and I love the Hollywood Bowl. It would be hard for me to leave Los Angeles to leave, the Hollywood Bowl. It's just such a beautiful experience every time I go there. So I get the reason why culture is such a high percentage of this survey.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to be able to interact and be able to go out and do some of those things. So I definitely can get that. I mean, you go out to like Alaska, for instance. I mean, with their culture statistic being so low. I mean, other than if you're a fisherman and you want to go to some of the national parks, not to hate on any of our Alaska listeners, but it's so darn cold there and the sunshine is not always there. What do you do?
Yeah.
Right.
And I assume that maybe it's part of the affordability, but taxes. I mean, certain states are better than others when it comes to that. Obviously, some don't even have taxes.
Sure.
And that would be a nice thing to be able to save 10% of your income by not having to pay taxes, and that would make it more affordable. But sometimes, like states with like Texas, they don't have basically an income tax, but the property tax is very high. So I mean, they're going to get you somehow, right?
Sure.
So,
let's get off of the somber tone. And let's get to more of a positive thing. Let's talk about the 10 best.
Yeah.
According to Bankrate. We'll start with number 10 and we'll go to the best. Okay. So they're saying number 10, based on affordability and the weather, is actually Kentucky.
Huh.
Okay. So Kentucky, and we're going to kind of hang out in the Midwest a little bit here. So we've got Kentucky, Indiana, and Ohio. That's your number 10, 9, and 8. Or your top 3, if you will. Or low 3, followed by none other than Arizona.
Nice.
Arizona, their affordability rank pretty high, right? We're starting to, especially now, we're starting to see some of those California real estate prices, especially in the Phoenix market. I can tell you over the last 4 years, watching the real estate market here, being a buyer in the market and seeing this stuff, it is crazy. I mean, I've got friends that live out in the Pasadena, LA area that are buying a 2,500 square foot house, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, in a nice neighborhood, and they're spending less money there than they would be here in Scottsdale.
Interesting.
Granted, property taxes and things and taxes in general are lower here, but you don't have the weather like you necessarily do in Pasadena. Now, Pasadena gets warm; it's inland, but they're actually saying Arizona has some of the best weather. Yes, it's hot, right? But it's a dry climate. So that goes right back to what I was talking about earlier with my dad's arthritis. So number 7, Arizona. Number 6, Wyoming. Jeff, you ever been to Wyoming?
I have. I love it there.
Okay. I have never been. I know there's stuff to do up there, but it's just a huge state, just like Montana. So I've not been up there. This one kind of took me by surprise. Number 5 was Massachusetts. I always thought those East Coast states were going to be extremely expensive. Now, what they're saying is Massachusetts, yes, definitely has a very high cost of living, but their weather's great. supposedly, and their wellness. So their healthcare and the things that are available to you for your wellness are excellent. It's actually the best in the country.
Interesting.
So I was kind of shocked. Number 4, Missouri, or Missouri, depending on where, in the states that you live and how you pronounce it. Number 3 is Tennessee, one of my favorite states. Really? Yep. So Tennessee is actually the most affordable state to live in as of when this survey was reported. And now, so they're using data from 2020 to make this survey. So it's not quite this year, but they're going off last year's data. Most affordable state to live in is Tennessee. Healthcare is expensive, but the weather and affordability for cost of living is probably some of the cheapest in the country. A lot of fun stuff to do in Tennessee. I don't know about you, Jeff, but I've spent some time over in Nashville. If you like live music, it is the place to be. I kind of call it the country music Vegas, if you will. There's always something to do there, and just great people. You've got that Southern comfort kind of vibe. The people are wonderful.
Absolutely wonderful. Yeah, I was very fortunate to be able to represent my college, and went to the collegiate finals in racquetball that was in Memphis, and I was hosted by a local family that were the nicest people I've ever met in the world. Yeah. They were just sweet and just so giving and caring, and let me into their home, and oh my God, it was such a great experience. And obviously the food there is amazing, and I had a really good time. Really good time. It was a little eye-opening in certain areas, but it was a place I would definitely go back and visit.
Sure. Number 2, Florida.
Wow.
I don't think that's going to be really a whole surprise for everyone. I think a lot of people may have thought that Florida was going to be number 1. Right. But because of the influx of the New Yorkers and the East Coasters that are moving down there, just like Arizona, it's bringing those real estate prices up. So the affordability rank for Florida is actually increasing. Now, what I will say is their wellness, their culture, their weather. If you can deal with the humidity during the summer, great place. If you can deal with the bugs. I spent a summer in Florida, and you've got to have the screened in around your back patio because you have a light on and you just get swarmed with bugs back there. But if you figure out ways to get around it, it's a lovely place to be. You're right next to the water. There's a lot of things to do. It's definitely in some areas very good retirement communities. Got a lot of those 55 and over active adult communities, which is really good for wellness, right? You got a place that has pickleball, racquetball, some of those sports that the older generation really enjoy playing. I think that's super important.
And how many racetracks do they have there?
What? I mean, Daytona, we've got Daytona, we've got Sebring. We've probably got a couple others that I can't think off the top of my head because I've never been to, but I've been to Daytona and Sebring.
Definitely.
So, they definitely have some fun stuff out there. And so number 1 for me was a little bit of a shocker. I don't know about you, Jeff, but drum roll, please.
Oh, listen to you.
Georgia is the number 1 state, according to Bankrate, to retire in. Wow. Now, the reasons for this... Teaches. The affordability rank, so it comes in right behind Florida or right behind Tennessee as far as affordability. The weather comes in right behind Arizona, so you've got a little bit less humidity, especially if you're in a little bit the northeast part of Georgia. You've got away from the humidity, away from the humidity coming off the ocean and things. Crime rate fairly low compared to some of the others. I would say it's actually half. Of what they're considering Tennessee is, so that's where it gets a lot of its score. Where it does lack is culture. Okay, they've got really good wellness stuff, not a whole lot of culture. So I don't know if that means that if you're not into oranges and things like that, you're not in the in crowd. But listeners, if you're listening to this show and you're like, hey Matt, hey Jeff, you guys are full of it. We think this state. I'd love to hear why. Shoot us an email. Let's have a conversation about it. Shoot us an email at info@smartretirementcast.com. smartretirementcast.com. Again, that's info at smartretirementcast.com. Or give us a call, 866-53-RETIRE. Love to hear from our listeners. If you're living in any of these states and, you're like, I think this is a little bit different, I'd love to hear about it. I talk to so many different people on a daily basis from different states, always looking for advice from their peers. So this really covers the 50 states. But, I kind of started this episode talking about, it might be cool to go from city to city or from state to state. But what if we go out of the country?
Let's get out of here.
So we get out of the country. Where do we go? Where would you go, Jeff?
First place that comes to mind is Italy. I think that I'll probably wind up spending a lot of my time in Italy, and and obviously someplace like Costa Rica, maybe New Zealand. Someplace that's got a lot of activity, a lot of culture. Maybe the culture probably means a little bit different. It might not mean theater and the Hollywood Bowl, but it might be the culture of that particular society that lives there, and the history of the people there, which always fascinates me. That's one of the reasons why I love China so much. I don't see myself actually buying a place. I think that as much as I've traveled, I've always liked coming back to Los Angeles. I like calling Los Angeles my home. I think that when 70% of my friends are for someplace else, there's something to be said about Los Angeles. I don't know if I'd ever buy another place, someplace, to be honest with you. I think I'll probably stay in Los Angeles for not only the culture, but the medical, the friends and family, and the weather. I can't knock the weather.
Sure.
Well, what I find and the canyon roads of Mulholland.
Sure. I mean, as long as you can still drive that stick shift, until you have to go with the automatic, I get it. So
ain't gonna happen. That's what a short shifter's for. I don't have to shift as much.
There you go. You still got to push the clutch pedal, though, buddy.
Ooh.
What I found interesting in the survey that you sent over, Jeff, is for our internationally minded listeners. The top 5 countries in 2021 that they're saying people are looking into retiring into is one, Jeff, you just mentioned it, Costa Rica. You and I have spent some time down there together. It's fantastic. The healthcare is good, if not great. You've got the bordering country to there, Panama down off the south, Mexico, Colombia, and Portugal.
Wow.
Those are your top 5. Portugal, baby.
Interesting.
So one of the things, the thing I want to point out here is if we're looking at going outside of the U.S., there's definitely some things and hurdles that you want to pay attention to if this is something you're considering. So first would be the ease of buying and owning property, and the value of the property investments in that area. I've got a buddy that's looking at buying a property in Cabo San Lucas right now. The market's really hot down there, right? Everyone's trying to get out of the U.S., wants to just kind of not deal with some of the restrictions and things here. So I think it's driving the market up. But what happens if the market crashes there? I mean, people don't buy houses down there with anything less than cash. They don't really do mortgages like we do here in the United States. So now you're in a position where if the market tanks, you're stuck with this property, man. Yeah. And you could be sitting with that thing for 10, 15 years. It's one of those things you want to analyze and make sure that you're making a decision that can be a lifelong decision if you're going to be doing something like that. If you're not buying, well, what's the cost of renting? And what does the inflation look like in that country when it comes to that? Because when we're trying to budget, we want to ensure that we can afford the rental costs of that building or that apartment or condo or house, right?
And there's also a lot of restrictions sometimes on foreigners owning property in general. So you got to know those laws.
Yep. There may be benefits and discounts on healthcare and some of your entertainment stuff. I mean, if it's $60 for a round of golf here, maybe it's $30 down there. So, I mean, it makes sense there and you're budgeting. But like you just said, Jeff, I mean, your visa and your residency requirements for buying, owning, or renting property there, or maybe becoming a citizen in that country. Look up the ways to do that. I mean, you have to be employed to be a citizen there. Cost of living, we talked about that. And, we got to be able to make friends, right?
Sure.
So how do we fit in the community? Do we like the people? Can we make friends? Are we going to learn the language? If we're going down, past the border, down to Mexico and things, are we going to learn Spanish?
See.
Probably should. See. Entertainment, amenities, what's there to do? What are we going to do to stay active? We got to stay healthy. How's the gym stuff? What's all that look like? What's the development and infrastructure like, right? I mean, is it up and coming, or is it a dying city, right? You don't want to be in an area where it's a dying city. It's going to be kind of sad, somber. You don't want that. In your golden years, you want these exciting times. You want to have fun. Climate, right? Jeff, we went down to Costa Rica in November of last year. Perfect weather. I mean, it was a little humid, it was a little hot, but it wasn't terrible. I imagine during their peak summer, it's a little more miserable, but, can you deal with it? I don't know that it's going to be any worse than maybe living in Miami. Sorry, any of our Miami listeners. And then the other thing you want to look at is the stability of the political culture there, right? I mean, I know we've got a kind of, and I don't want to get political here, but we've got some interesting things going on here in our home front. And good, bad, or indifferent, we still are, a nation that it's, followed by a constitution, things like that. We've got good law enforcement for the most part. You start going into these third world countries, you want to look into those things, and you want to make sure that you're going to be safe. Again, talked about it earlier. You don't want to have those bars and stuff on your windows. If you're going out of the country, it might be good to look into these communities that have, a gated entry, and you're in a community where you've got security going around, et cetera, et cetera. So, hard to say.
Or tell everybody that you're from Canada. Everybody loves Canadians.
Right.
Do you remember when we were down in Costa Rica? I remember asking our trusted guide about all the bars on the windows there, and I thought it was so interesting to hear that it wasn't that people were breaking in and stealing things. They were breaking in and stealing food.
Right.
It was more of a survival thing than I need to go hawk something, for drugs, that
Sure.
type of thing. Very interesting to.
Yeah, it was just more for necessities and trying to get by, right?
Yeah. Sad.
Well, Jeff, I appreciate you spending the time and kind of researching this episode for us. I've been traveling too much to spend too much time on it, but when it comes to racing, where you finish is probably one of the most important things, in racing. I mean, why else do we race? We want to win, right? And I think we can look at the same a lot in retirement, right? The finishing years of your life is retirement, and the factors that go into that to bring you joy and fulfillment, in that retirement are extremely important. So I guess, we kind of have to end with this with saying, prepare wisely and finish strong, right?
There you go.
So, Jeff, is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap up the show for this evening and I head off to Mexico tomorrow?
You have to be able to finish to win. Is that what the saying is?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
And we can't be one in the first corner.
Exactly.
That's debatable. Unless you watch the Formula One race this last... I won't even get into that. We could have a separate racing podcast.
I know. I got a couple of pictures I got to send you of some jokes about Hamilton. Oh my God!
Send them my way. And listeners, again, if you've got any questions, comments, you have a question that you want us to air on the show, be happy to read it. We'll leave any personal details out, but love to share some of the things that come in from our listeners. 866-53-RETIRE. Again, that's 866-53-RETIRE. Or shoot us an email at info@smartretirementcast.com. So, Jeff, thanks again for joining me today in episode 56. And listeners, let's go out and make the rest of our lives the best of our lives.
Thanks, Matt.
The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide or construed as providing specific investment advice. Any economic forecast set forth in this podcast may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee the strategies promoted will be successful. All performance reference is historical and is no guarantee of future results. Investing involves risks, including the potential loss of principal. No investment strategy or risk management technique can guarantee return or eliminate risk in all market environments. Thanks for tuning into this podcast. California license number 0175638, NMLS number 1246224.